is Jessica Felix, and I am doing my video blog number 2 on WordSpurt and a study that was conducted behind this. So the authors of study are Jennifer Ganger, who is from the University of Pittsburgh and is from the Department of Psychology, and Michael B. Brent, who is from Washington University in St. Louis, and he is from the Department of Computer Science. So the research question is the whole idea of vocabulary spurt. So is there such thing as a faster rate in which children learn words? Um, or is it just part of their cognitive development? Is it something that goes hand in hand? Or is there actually a time frame in which children acquire language at a much faster rate than they do when they begin to learn language? So there's a lot of background information on this concept. DeBrito and Bjork came out with an article in 2000, which where it was introduced to Jennifer and Michael, the whole concept of vocabulary spurt, and they had the same concept. There was also other. Laura Burke also came out with a book, a literature book, and in there it had the same kind of concept. The naming insight is noun-based learning, where they're able to differentiate and itemize things. So once they know that everything has a name, then it allows for their vocabulary to grow at faster speeds. The author's point of view is they really just want some kind of definite evidence of vocabulary spurt. They want to see if there is really such thing. It doesn't say if it's pro or con. It just says that, they're just wanting to get some evidence to prove that there is a vocabulary spurt, if any. So there was 3 experiments that they used for testing these studies, in which they used data that had already been used in previous studies. So the first experiment was of 20 children. There was 10 boys and 10 girls, and it was data that had been collected by Resnick and Goldfield, I believe in 1992, in a study that they had conducted on vocabulary, in which parents were to write down daily journals of the words that their children were using. Even if it included the same words daily, they were still to write those down. And that consisted for a 2-week period, in which was then evaluated and put on graphs by Resnick and Goldfield in their study. So that's the data that was used. It was Caucasian population, and it was only in the United States that this was conducted in. But the biggest change that they used here was the spurt test. So what that is it's 2 different mathematical equations that are used, and one of them is quadratic and the other one is I'm trying to find my notes here. It's always hard for me to logistic. So the logistic is the biggest one because it has an inflectional point, which really determines if there was a spurt and really gets that curve up there on the graphs. So they did use that that equation, which made all the difference according to them to show if any word spurt in the children. So quadratic versus logistic are the biggest differences used in this experiment to tell if there was a word spurt in those 20 children. Now, the results from this test are no vocabulary spurt. So there was only 50%. I believe it was less than 9 out of 20 of the children had a word spurt, which isn't very much according to them. The second experiment was just a re-examination of the previous study. This time they blew up the graphs that they used from the same study and they taped them to windows, so it allowed them to view 17 out of 18 children's vocabulary graphed. and they didn't use an inflectional point this time, just to see if there was any difference for any biases, twin biases, just equational biases. So that was the reasoning for that. So it was 17 out of children that were able to be conducted for this one. Now the results showed only 2 out of 17 showed a word spurt. So once again, it resulted in a no vocabulary spurt for children. A lot less than half of them didn't, and once again it goes to show you. Now, experiment 3 was data that was collected before the previous one, and it was from Dromi, and it was also journal entries that she had taken down of her daughter Karen's vocabulary at that point in time, and that was in 1987. So it is data once again that wasn't collected as of today. This is as far back as 1987 collection that was being used. So journal entries were being used, and it was of her daughter. So it was more like on a personal level because there was only one child being studied. Now the experiment, it still showed no growth spurt. They didn't use the inflectional point on this experiment either. They did use the quadratic to get to see if there was any curve, but they still didn't see any results as far as the vocabulary spurt for this child. So the overall results, 1 out of every 5 have or children have a vocabulary spurt, and it's definitely not universal, and we can definitely see that not every child goes through a word spurt. So it's more just cognitive, and maybe we can look more into if it's noun-based learning. So once they are able to learn once they're able to learn words and name things, I think that causes for the vocabulary spurt to happen, or just faster learning in all aspects. And the reference, it was really just the article. I had a lot of detailed information as far as previous studies used, as well as today and the study that was conducted. Thank you.